Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Building a Leadership Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Nikki C., all the way from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm super excited to be here to bring you another amazing guest. But first, let's thank our sponsors for always making this happen. We have Carolyn Bob Green with Training You to Succeed. We have Julia Noah with Breathe Capital Planning. We have Top Fox, where they make the shades for our upcoming anthology called Taking Off the Shades. It's a Ladies of Leadership community anthology launching in Chicago, Illinois at our Empower to Inspire tour launch. And I'm super excited to have more announcements about that a little bit later. But let's get right over to our guest. And we have the amazing Paul McFadden. I met him through the Author Millionaire Academy. We co-authored Born to Risk together. Super excited to have met him at the yacht event we had back in August. And we just connected, and we're here today to bring you some amazing nuggets and just content about just really being you. So Paul McFadden is an internationally recognized speaker, best-selling author, and human optimization expert with nearly 30 years of leadership and service. A proud U.S. Navy Reserve veteran, he is the founder and CEO of Evolve Human Potential, transforming lives through personal mastery, human performance, and lifestyle optimization. Paul's integrative NeuroSomatic approach blends cutting-edge research with ancient wisdom to enhance emotional and mental, physical, and spiritual well-being. His mission is to empower individuals and leaders to navigate life with purpose, clarity, and resilience. A master facilitator, a trusted advisor, he has guided over 3,500 executives worldwide, earning recognition as an adjunct faculty member, guest professor, and leadership architect. With an educational journey that began at the United States Merchant Marine Academy, Paul has pursued advanced certifications in executive and team coaching, functional medicine coaching, and resilience building. Currently, he is earning his PhD in integrative medicine at Quantum University. Dedicated to human evolution, Paul inspires others to unlock their potential and design a life of purpose. Join him on a journey in conscious awakening, optimizing well-being, and embracing the future human potential, becoming human 2.0. Oh my goodness, super excited to have him here. And let's not wait any longer. Hello, Paul. How are you today?
Hello, my beautiful human Nikki. It's wonderful to be here with you today.
It's wonderful to finally have you on and join our Bomb Global podcast family. We have been in connection for quite a couple months now. Tell us a little bit about your earlier journey. You know, you as a child, what was like your upbringing like, and how did you end up at, as a Marine and just going through, or Navy SEAL, right?
Navy. It's Navy Reserve. Yep.
And how did that happen for your life? So share with us.
There's a breathe for that one. A lot. You know, one thing I will say, because I've had a conversation about this a couple of days ago, and I was talking to a gentleman, and he said, I don't know if I could have been born in this era right now with all that we have with technology and information and all the things that are out there to distract us. And as I thought about that, as he said it, it landed with me, because I was like, I wonder what that would have been like to have that experience. I truly feel a lot of empathy for kids today, having the distractions and having all that's at them. And then we as parents get on them about not being able to focus and and all these different things and where they put their attention. But yet we didn't have that growing up. I was a latchkey kid. I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and a lower middle class family that was working their way up, and I was born in DC and raised mostly in the DC area, but spent a little bit of time in Ohio and then back to the DC area in Maryland. And, most people say you had a regular childhood. I mean, I grew up when they had rotary phones, regular phones, and, we were the antenna for the TV, so different era, different timing, different rules, different ways of going about, achieving freedom in your family and earning your place, earning your keep, so to speak, right? Or, so you had to give respect in order to get respect, and you had to respect your elders, and that was the era that I grew up in. And so I went to science technology high school, which afforded me the opportunity to go to one of the 5 federal service academies. So I went to the United States Merchant Marine Academy. It's an amazing experience. Not very many people have the opportunity to do that. Um, I didn't get in on my first try. I was on the waiting list. It was interesting because I initially applied for the Naval Academy, and the Naval Academy said, "Well, you got the grades, but we're going to put you on the waiting list." And so I said, "Well, that's interesting. Let me find out what's going on at the United States Merchant Marine Academy." And they had an opening for me, and I changed all my nominations from all my congressmen, and I got to go to the United States Merchant Marine Academy, which was the better choice for me. Um, sailed the 7 seas, went to 36 countries by the time I was 20 years old, um, and had a different perspective on life and this human experience in the world. And I brought that perspective back to the United States, which was a very interesting time for me, late 80s, early 90s, and just seeing how society was very much different than it is today. But in many respects, there are a lot of similarities. And so, um, but the Navy was a great experience because I got to see the world and I got to experience a lot of different cultures and peoples, which was the most important thing. I got to experience people and I learned how to forge relationships with people of different backgrounds, of different nationalities, different cultures. And when you're on a ship with 40 guys sailing across the ocean for 2 weeks, you have to learn how to navigate conflict because the ocean is deep and there's no one in the middle of the ocean to police you. So there are certain rules and laws that kind of govern that experience and that lifestyle as well. So, but all in all, great experience. I wouldn't change it for the world because everything that I've experienced in the past leads to right now, and I'm here talking to you. So, no matter how I judge the experience, it was what it was, and I learned everything or started the learning from that experience.
I love that mindset. And here on Building a Leadership Mindset, I love talking about mindset, right? What was your mindset going through the journey when you were going through those experiences and navigating those conflicts? What were some of the resolutions that you picked up that you might have not had in your toolkit until you got to that experience?
Well, there was a lot. I'm trying to think of one that's very succinct. Yeah, in the United States at that time, so I was in the military in 1988 to 1992. And as a child growing up, I experienced a lot of racism. And um, I did experience racism while I was at sea. But what was interesting was that, and being a junior officer as well. So here I am an African American junior officer on a ship, um, and there were many people on the ship who didn't take kindly to the fact that I was in the officer role. Well, I'll just put it that way. But as people got to know me and see my work ethic and experience my decision making processes, and just the way I perform, I was able to get the job done and get the job done effectively and correctly the first time. Right. So so part of it was just there was a proving of yourself. And then and a lot of times, you may have experienced it too. When you're growing up, I had to be 10 times better than everybody else, right? In order to get respect, in order to be seen as a person that was competent. So that carried on, from my childhood into that experience. But I learned a lot about people, and I started learning about early on what drove people, and I didn't really understand that until years later, taking classes and getting, going through a master's level program and understanding human behavior. But as an 18-year-old, I learned that there were certain things that drove people, but we all really seemed to want the same thing. We wanted to be treated with respect.
Absolutely. So human behavior became basically your love language while you were in that space. That's what I mean. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're absolutely correct. There was some part of it was wanting to be accepted, but the other part
Mm,
was we're all in this experience together. Can't we be more collaborative and cooperative and get through this together? Versus because we need each other. Like you need that group of people to survive that trip. You hit a storm in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in the wintertime. And anybody who knows what that experience is like, it's like think of a hurricane, but think of yourself being right in the middle of the hurricane in the ocean.
mhm.
And there is no turning back. There is no evacuation. There is no there's no bridge that you can hide under. And there's no place, and you can't really stop. So you're having the experience whether you want to or not. And the ocean can make you feel very, very small when it's angry. And when you have that experience, you have to stick together. And I found a sense of brotherhood early on in that experience.
That's beautiful. So share that a little bit more with us. What are, did you have to lead others in your role, and how did that look like? And you talked about you were working on understanding it for one to see the acceptance. How does that work? And how people actually behave under whatever it is, pressure,
Mhm.
uh, in certain situations. So tell us a little bit about how did that help with the community building while you're in the middle of the sea.
Yeah. So my responsibility on the ship, I was a navigation officer. So I was the one responsible for plotting the route and then making sure we were staying on. And so part of that was using some old school methodology, using a sextant and kind of positioning ourselves with the sun and the stars. So using celestial navigation. Another part of that was using electronic and radar navigation. Well, radar navigation was the norm, but because I was a junior officer, I had to also prove myself that I could do it using celestial navigation or the manual way. So in those moments when I was on the bridge doing the navigation, I was responsible for everyone's life in many respects. I'm the one that had to give the order to shift the direction that we're going. I'm the one that had to give the order to either slow the ship down or speed it up. And obviously the camp captain was there overseeing the process, but he really put it in my hands. And the irony of that situation was the captain of the ship was the one who pulled me to the side after I had proven myself. And he said, when you first got on the ship, I really didn't like you. And here's the reason why. Where I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, we didn't have any African Americans in our community, and those that we did, we had a certain way we felt about them, and that's just how I grew up. And he was an older guy. He was in the 70s, so he was speaking from many years of history. And he said, "But I've watched you handle yourself with the crew. I've watched you handle yourself with the customs officers when they come into port, and what you won't let them do, and what you will let them do, but you make sure they don't take advantage of the seamen who are on the ship." He said, "I've grown to respect you, and I would bring you home and introduce you to my community if you're ever in Mobile, Alabama." And he said, "I want you to know if you ever do come down there, you are safe with me." And at the time, I was 18 years old, and I really kind of cherished that experience because I hadn't had an experience where I had someone openly tell me that they hated me when they first met me, but then grew to respect me because they saw the type of person that I was. And I knew then that it was possible to change someone's perspective on you as long as you're a good person.
Oh my goodness, which also started your leadership mindset, right? Talk about what leadership means to you and how you use that in your day to day to continue to showcase that.
Yeah. So It's a great question. So I'll say this. So my leadership is the sum total of all the roles I've been in. So we're talking about military, and in the military, I did attain certain levels of rank, and I was promoted up and promoted up and promoted up. Um, I, and then when I graduated, I was an ensign, and then I came out of the military. But at the academy, I was a lieutenant commander of the um, of the color guard and rifle squad and honor guard. So I was a pretty high ranking cadet when I was at the academy. But fast forward, when I started working in the business world, I certainly made every stride to perform at my best and to attain the next level. And a lot of that was driven by my experience in the military. But there did come a time when I was kind of hit a plateau mid-career, and the military bearing and the military leadership levels of rank that worked for so long. But I realized, and partly that was I was coached by one of my mentors. Hey, the things that got you here aren't going to get you to the next level. So you got to learn more about yourself, and you got to learn more about other people. Well, because I do like people, I was able to realize that, hey, you need to treat people like they want to be treated, which is interesting when you start talking about golden rule, platinum rule type of mindset. So, golden rules, treat others like you want to be treated. And I think when you do that, if I treat you like I want to be treated, I'm teaching you how to treat me.
Mm-hmm.
But if I take the time to get to know you and see what you need and what drives your behaviors and the things that inspire you, and I treat you and give you those things, now we're connecting. Now we're connecting. So I always like to share the platinum rule versus the golden rule, and that gave me an opportunity to understand what people really needed, needing respect, needing clarity, needing direction, needing autonomy, needing status, needing equality, equity, and fairness, needing all these different things. Uh, and when you start giving people what they need, and the thing is, that what the things that are most important for you may not be most important for the next person. So it's differentiating between individuals. That's when I started excelling in the leadership role. I went from management to upper level management, senior level management, executive level management in the period of 4 or 5 years, like very quickly, because I learned, I'll say I learned that secret, and it shouldn't be a secret, but it is really a secret. Treat people like they want to be treated. And when you do that, they will respond in kind. They'll be more inspired, they'll be more engaged, they'll be more open to possibilities and open to learning. Another thing that leadership means to me is that leadership is about the individual who's in that role not taking themselves too seriously and understanding that, and I kind of joke around, but I'm being serious when I say it many times, is leadership development is emotional management, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leaders deal with all kinds of situations and scenarios all the time. And those scenarios sometimes are unsettling. And when you have people looking up to you or looking for your guidance, you can't be a dysregulated, out of control individual. The worst leaders I had, which were many of them, were ones that, when things got tough, were yelling and screaming and throwing chairs across the room. That's not the example of a great leader. That's the example of a leader out of control. Um, but the leaders that I used to want to emulate and still do in many respects, I mean, there's my father and there's my grandfather, and my uncle that I had that passed away. But it was General Colin Powell, who was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and head of the Joint Forces during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, along with General Schwarzkopf. And I had an opportunity to meet General Powell and have a conversation with him, sit down, break some bread with him. And he was the type of person that he listened. He made you feel like you were the most important person in the room when he was talking to you. There was nobody else. There was nothing more important than the conversation and the connections you had with him in that moment. And I remember being 19. No, I was 21 years old when I met him. And I remember thinking, I'm going to be just like that. I'm going to treat people just like that. And so I had some good mentors and good role models to model after. But none of those were any of my bosses. So anybody who's listening that used to be my supervisor, I'm sorry, but You're not on the list.
I'm with you.
And that's just being honest, right? And I
Yeah.
think that many times we don't have someone to emulate. And I like to, invite people to think about the leaders that were the most influential and had the most impact on them. And sometimes they're not the people that they've worked for. Sometimes they're people that they watched across the row or across the aisle or in another department or with another organization, or someone that was on TV even, or someone in the past. And because we don't get the great leaders all the time running our organizations and running our teams, we get people who are very dysregulated many times. And it's not to criticize, it's to help people see that you're responsible for you, and
Hmm.
you're responsible for the type of leader that you're going to be. It takes intention to show up as that leader. But if you don't understand the quality and traits that it takes to be this leader that you want to emulate, then you're kind of shooting in the dark. What I learned early on, emulate the qualities that inspired me in these leaders that I looked up to, and then emulate those qualities now. I didn't have to wait for experience. I didn't have to wait for 25 years and 50 training programs in order to now be a good listener. Or treat someone, or have integrity. Right? It was emulated for me, and therefore I said, I'm going to do the same thing. Don't reinvent the wheel. There are people who are emulating these qualities. Figure out what the qualities are, emulate them now, and then set an intention to be that type of leader.
That's so powerful. And I was just going to ask you, what is a quote or a saying or a motto, one of your core values that you live by each and every day, and share it with our audience in reference to that, in reference to being a listener. So many times as leaders, we want to give the order, we want to, give the blueprint, the game plan, and all that stuff without even listening. Do our people really need that? So, kind of share what are your core values on that?
Well, that's for me. That has really shifted and changed over time. I think that's a very beautiful question, um, because many times we adopt values that don't belong to us. We adopt values that we're expected to take on from our families, or from our caregiver, or from our community leaders, or sometimes family members. And so, first, I'm going to say that the values need to resonate, and they need to be you. And many times I've asked the same question to many people, and they don't know what their values are. Right. Or they make something up because it's like, okay, this is what my values are supposed to be because this is what I was told they were. But, but I look back at all that, and I've done some deep work, in the area of purpose. And part of purpose is really doing a deep dive into exploring what your true values are, and understanding what those values and characteristics are. And so for me, there are five. Um, and so first one is awakening spirit. This is what I'm really called to do. If I have information, if I have knowledge, I am compelled to share it in a way that is easy to understand, and with the intention of, if I can impact one person, if I can get one person to be inspired and shift something they do, then I've been successful in my journey, in my purpose journey. So awakening spirit is one. The second one is building relationships. I love people. That's when I came on. You're a beautiful human. And I look at every human being as being a beautiful human. And there's a psychology behind that, because I think language means everything, right? Nikki Cuesta, right? Beautiful human, right? There's a lot of things that we could go through all the labels and say, yeah, she's this, she's that, she's a mom, she's got the show, this is her background, this is her heritage, this is her religion. We can go through all those labels. Well, first and foremost, you're a human being, and even then, you're a spiritual being having this physical human experience, from my perspective. So, language means everything, and I think we need to use language that shows high esteem for the other person, right? So, building relationships is treating everyone like the same as the human they are, having an experience. The third thing I'm here to do is to make connections. That's about bringing information from disparate pieces from different areas, subject matter, bringing them together and marrying it and unpacking that and deconstructing it and reconstructing it into something that's tangible, taking it out of the ether and say, no, this is enlightenment. It's a very ethereal word. Can I bring it down to the ground level and show you how to get on the path towards enlightenment that's not going to a cave on Mount Kilimanjaro and meditating for 40 years with 8 billion people on the planet, plus all the technology and all the things that we have that are getting in the way? That's a different prospect, right? But being able to deconstruct that and share that makes it sound plausible and potentially possible. Next thing I am here to do is really about breaking molds. I push against status quo every opportunity that I get. There are a lot of people who don't like that I do that, but I've been the first at so many things in my family. Now, I wasn't the first one to go to college. My grandparents were the first ones to go to college, so it was expected I would go to college. But I was the first in my class, to hit the levels of leadership that was an African American when I was in my college. I was one of 40 students in my high school in the specific specialized technology program. I was the first African American coach in my local coach community. Just things like that. And I never really set out to be the first, but if the opportunity presents itself, I'm like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let's make that happen right now. And I had the opportunity to be the first at what's it called, the Integrative Healthcare Symposium. I went there. It's in New York. It's there in New York every year. I started going in 2018. And the second time I attended that conference, I'm looking out around the room as I listen to all these doctors talk about the nature and the plight of the world on a global level, where food was, where medicine was. And I'm looking around the room, and I was the only person that looked like me, and I was the only male that looked like me. And there were about 1,000 people in this conference. And I stood up and I felt immediately the weight of the world on my shoulders, because I was like, what they're talking about. There are people in disenfranchised communities. There are people that look like me in middle class communities that do not have access to this information because no one's talking to them. And particularly in the Black and brown community. And so I said, you know what? I need to pursue a PhD in this subject area and start bringing this to the communities that don't have access to it. Because what a travesty this is that there are people who can do these different techniques and have access to this type of care and preventative care and biohacking and all these different things, yet we're not having that conversation in these other communities. It's a very rare moment that you see that happening. And so that's why I started pursuing my PhD. I'm gonna be the first.
Yes.
So those things drive me. And the last thing is bringing joy. And for me, so there's 5. So bringing joy to me is so important, because I think that if you can't have fun doing what you're doing, then the question is, what are you doing it for? I'm building a tribe. I have a podcast. I talk to people all over the world. If I'm not having fun doing that, then what's the point? Because then it's just a job. And I look at when you're working in a space that you love, and you're working on purpose, that is love in physical form, right? If you're doing what you're passionate about, that's love in physical form. Now folks can find passion in their jobs and find passion in doing what they do, and it not be their calling, right? Your calling can be something else on the side, because we have to make money. There is a little bit of that, right? At least in a capitalistic society, at least for right now. So, but in a capitalistic society, you had to make money because everything costs money, so you had to do that. But it's a rarity if you can be working, making money, doing what you're passionate about. That's completely love, right there, right? But does that line up for everybody? Not all the time. But I think the thing that you're getting, I want to share those, because those are the values that shape me now. But I can tell you where that came from. And it started with a poem that I learned back when I was in my 20s. It's called Invictus, and it was written by a man named William Ernest Henley, 1849 to 1906. In the end of the poem, and I would say the poem, but I don't want to do that to you. I know it by heart. It's one of those
Oh
things I had to
yeah,
remember.
definitely. No, share it with us. Absolutely.
Okay, it
You know
goes.
what the poem is. Give me a bit, and not share it with
Let's
us.
go ahead. Let's go ahead. Let's do
Let's
this.
do
Right.
it.
Right. Okay. So it's Invictus. Out of the night that covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for this, my unconquerable soul. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloodied, but I'm bowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, nor how charged with punishments the scroll, for I am the captain of my fate. I am the master of my soul.
That is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I know I was not going to let you go without sharing that. And I actually wrote it down, so I'm going to actually take some time, kind of look at it as well, and kind of pick those pieces apart because it's filled with some deep stuff, and it's all
Some
about.
deep allegory, and some metaphors. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I want to go back to your 5 core values, and one of them that stood out, they all were amazing. One of
Mm.
them that stood out, which is breaking the molds, um, and those generational curses. And there's people right now that have those opportunities, that have been given opportunities, and they just don't know what to do with them. It's a two-part question. The first part
Mhm.
is, at any point in time when these opportunities came to you, did you ever feel like you wouldn't be able to live up to the expectation? Not because you couldn't, just did that inner hater ever try to present itself for these positions, and how did you handle that?
That's a great question. So the short answer is, of course, I had some resistance, and of course, I had some self doubt. We all do. No matter what the experience is, anybody tells you they've never had any self doubt, I'd question their integrity, right? I will say that. Um, but there is a time when you feel like something is too big or you're not ready. And there have been times in the past where I felt like I'm not ready for that yet. I never said I'd never be able to do. Never is not typically a word that I like to carry in my vocabulary. So I try to end those conversations or those thoughts with yet, because yet's the challenge. That's the want to break molds inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Not yet, um, but yet can hold you back, and you don't act right away. So there are times where I knew that I needed additional experience, or I knew that I needed additional resources, or I knew I needed to connect with someone else and bounce some ideas off first, not just go in half cocked and just ready to come guns blazing. I'm gonna do this thing. Because one of the things I learned about leadership is that it's not always about me, right? And sometimes, in order to do things the right way, you need to slow down. Sometimes doesn't mean get paralyzed and not take any action. It just means slow down. Because the last thing I want to do is commit to doing something, do it incorrectly, then have to go back and rework it. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, there's some people who might disagree with me when I say that. They say, you just got to do it and then you go back and fix it later. Yeah, but if it takes you, a couple years to do it and then takes you another 10 years to fix it, was it really worth it? And so I have to push back a little bit on that and say, why don't you just do it right the first time? Right? It might take you a little bit longer to accomplish, but now you've set something up with a strong foundation and you're preparing for the legacy. Like it's so interesting how now I think so much more about legacy, and maybe it's because I'm older now. So when I was younger, I wasn't thinking anything about legacy, but now when I move forward with projects, I'm thinking about what's the long term impact? What's the impact after I'm gone? what's that look like? What's the longevity of this thing going to be? And if I don't see it, I will dig until I do see it, because I want things to matter. I think that's the most important thing for me. I want them to matter. Um, Even like being here, this is going to matter. This conversation is going to matter to at least one person, right? And if
For sure.
if that's the case, then who knows? That one person might go from this conversation and impact millions. They might. I mean, there's nothing to say that won't happen. Right? Is it probable? I don't know. I mean, there's a probability. I mean, we can probably calculate it, but it's the probability is not zero. I think that's the whole point, right? So it's not zero. There is a chance. So if you don't, and the one thing I've learned, even in the experience with AMA, we wrote that book, Born to Risk, together, and if you don't share the story, you're not going to help anybody.
Yep.
Right? Not going to help anybody. It's just a story that's in your head, and you'll die with it. And maybe that's how people want it sometimes. But I kind of feel like if you have something to say, wow, just share it, because you never know what that's going to mean to someone else.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for answering that question. And you talked about legacy. We're going to get to that in just a moment. We are going to take a break, and then we're going to talk about what is Becoming Human 2.0. I am so interested to know and have our audience really dig into that. So we're going to take a quick break and check out what is coming to Chicago, Illinois, my hometown, May 16th and 17th. You definitely want to be there. You can go on buildingaleadershipmindset.com. It's the Empower to Inspire kickoff tour. We're going to all 50 states in the next couple of years, but that's where it starts. And this was our official business launch back in 2023. Hello. We are back with Paul McFadden. Emilio cracks me up every time I watch that video. It just cracks me up all the time. But that is our Empower to Inspire. So more information, just connect with us, with me, Nikki Cuesta, on Facebook. But we are here with Paul McFadden, and we are talking about the Becoming Human 2.0. We've been talking about leadership. We've been talking about mindset, core values. And the last question that we had was about getting an opportunity and either waiting for it to pass us by or actually taking action and really understanding who you are, what your core values are, and what type of legacy do you want to leave. So I'm just going to go out there. That event was actually done 4 months after I launched the first book, Building a Leadership Mindset. And I had no idea what I was doing. Usually when you become a coach, you're like, do small little pop-up coaching. And I went and did it 1 year from my first speaking competition with the Amma family, not having any experience. And not that I didn't have any experience. These are, when you have the right people, we talked about community at the end, right? I couldn't do this by myself. I had a team, a community, and I jumped in because that's the legacy that I want to leave behind, showing them how do you use these spaces, right, these networking groups, these communities, these events to really build the legacy that we are all trying to build, right? We all have dreams and desires. Some of us act on them, some of us don't. But talk about how does the human design, how does that work in this space, in this mindset of really going out on faith and just doing what you're meant to do? We talked about purpose. What are your
Yes.
thoughts?
So that's a big reason where Becoming Human 2.0 came from. So I went on a purpose journey back in 2016. And this was at a time when I thought I had reached the pinnacle of my coaching career. I was being invited to come into conferences to be coach faculty at week-long immersion experiences for Fortune 100 companies. I mean, it's one of those types of honors that very few people in the coaching in leadership development world get to experience. And here I was, I got invited to go 3 times in a row. And one time the first time I went, I met a gentleman there and he asked me, and this is funny, I shared the story in other talks, but I'll share it here because it's kind of what kind of launched the entire the entire process. If it was the igniter, the ignition to all of this. But he asked me, he said, Paul, so what are the 2 most important days of your life? And and I contemplated on that for a moment. And I was quiet. He said, do you like mathematics? And I said, well, yeah, I was an engineer when I was in college. So yeah, I like mathematics. So he said, well, write this number down, 29,200. He told me that. He gave me a couple more instructions. He goes, well, then take your age, multiply it by 365, and you're going to get a number. Take that number, subtract it from 29,200. And I did, and I got a number at the end. And he said, that's about how long you have left to live. Because 29,200 represents the number of days that the average human being lives on this planet. Mm. It's a pretty sobering moment. Now, what are the 2 most important days of your life? I'll come back to my question. Well, definitely the day that I was born. If I wasn't here, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the second answer surprised me. It was when you figure out why. Right? And this is something they teach in every culture, in every ancient culture. Many times, if you still have indigenous populations in certain areas, they teach that in those tribes, that the day that you're born and the day that you figure out why are the 2 most important days. The day that you figure out why that's when you have purpose in life. Now, the interesting thing about that is in most of our first world economies and nations, we don't focus on purpose. Not typically, it's not part of the conversation. And, anciently the elders used to get together and they would approach the adolescents in the tribe and they would say, okay, great. You need to go out there by yourself and you need to survive. And don't you dare come back until you figure out what it is you're supposed to do. Some survived, some didn't survive. The ones who survived, when they came back, they knew exactly what their purpose was and how they were supposed to serve the community. Ancient, you call it rites of passage, you call it vision quest, you can call it walkabout, you can call it whatever the indigenous tribes and different nations have called this over time. And I kind of went on that experience. Because I thought I reached that, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. Right. So there's this whole thing around self-actualization, which is where you achieve all your goals. There's a process you go through, but you're starting to live the life that you wanted. And I didn't feel like I felt like something was missing. And it was. The joy was missing for me. Right? The spiritual connection was missing for me. And when I say spiritual connection, and I don't want to be clear, when I look at spirituality, I look at how we connect to higher self, higher being. That could be a religious connection. I know a lot of people out there that are very religious, and that's one way to practice your spirituality. There's also contemplative practices that have been around anciently too. Another way to practice your spiritual connection, but it is being connected to something bigger than yourself. Right? So, and we all have the want, drive, and need for that connection. Some of us don't practice it, and we haven't found it yet. But I think that everyone finds their way to it. But I didn't have that connection, and so that's when I started doing the deep dive. What am I really passionate about? What are my true values? What am I good at doing? And these are things that you're good at doing because your friends tell you and your family tells you, not because you think you're good at doing these things, right? So what your true gifts are what other people come to you for, right? And when you figure out what that is, that shifts the mindset just a little bit. So I went on that journey and I started learning about, functional medicine. I became a functional medicine health coach. I got into a meditation practice. I um, learned about teaching meditation. I learned about resilience, and then I became a functional medicine health coach. And then that was not enough either. And then I went to that conference in 2018, 2019, and said, I need to get this PhD, but I didn't know when to start it. So that was one of those moments where I needed to start it. I don't like the word need either, but it was one of those, I felt called to start it, but the timing wasn't right. And I started my PhD during COVID because the world went on pause and we needed to occupy our time. And I could have occupied my time filling it with media and all the things that were happening in the world, which was devastating. And I certainly saw a fair share of that. But I started unplugging and started taking care of me and started focusing on my own personal growth. And then I made a shift. And then the shift was, what is happening in human society that we can do something about? And there's certainly a lot of technology that has been developed over the years, and certainly now with AI and machine learning and quantum computing, there's a lot that's in nanotechnology. There's a lot that's available to us. But I think that we can go one of two ways. We can follow the lead of the transhumanism movement, which the goal in transhumanism is to integrate our organic vessel with technology, like install the technology in the vessel and become one with the vessel, with the technology. The other way is we can go down the rabbit hole and figure out what the true potential of every human being, what it actually is, what we have the capacity to do. There's so many things that are available to us from an energetic perspective. I mean, we hear about these programs around the Gateway program, doing remote viewing, getting out of body, things of that nature. Which on the surface, some people say, "Oh, that's this new age, you know, fluff stuff that doesn't really happen." It doesn't happen, but they teach the military this stuff. So this is the advantage of being in the military and having access to DARPA and seeing what types of research that the military is doing, the advanced research, particularly with technology, and certainly understanding the impacts of frequencies and how there's energy in our experience. And while we might learn these things in our psychology and soft skill classes for those who've gone down this personal development route, when you have militaries and governments doing research on these topics, you might want to start paying attention. But again, these things are public knowledge, but most people kind of miss that. And so it becomes conspiracy theory and all kinds of things of that nature. But I certainly invite everyone to go to the DARPA website. It's public domain, and you can see all the research they're doing. And so when you start looking at that, it's like, well, we have the capability of doing that using telekinesis, understanding how to heal the body from an energetic perspective. These are things that, why only a few people have developed that? Why is it, and we call these folks gifted, or they're blessed, or they have this healing touch. We all have that available to us if we knew how to tap into it. So my thought was, well, there's definitely an imbalance um, in our societies. There's things that some people can do that everyone can do. When I look back anciently, there is a process called alchemy, which is a transformation of metals using 5 elements. When you look at spiritual, I'm going to call it spiritual alchemy. There's really 5 ways to look at spirituality. There is the heart, mind, body, soul, God, right, or higher power. The elements are fire, water, earth, air, ether. Well, if you look at that from a modern perspective and looking at some of the science from a wellness perspective, there's emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and ethereal well-being or conscious well-being. And there's 5 domains in each one of these areas for a reason. They're all connected. So you remember what I was saying about making connection? I saw the connection because alchemy is science, straight science, and it's about transforming. It's an art to it. The spirituality piece, spiritual alchemy, is science too. It's just explained very spiritually. The challenge that I saw was that it seems like it's too up in the clouds. Like how do you change the soul? How do you balance the soul? How do you balance the mind? How do you balance the heart? And there's a modern science now that talks about emotional well-being. Well, that's for the heart. Mental well-being for the mind. Physical well-being for the body. Spiritual well-being for the soul. We can get to ethereal, right? But if we can balance just the 4, we have 4 sturdy legs on the table. You can get to the 5th. But you got to do the first 4. And when I found that there was an imbalance emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. Some people do the spiritual really good, but they miss the emotional, mental, and physical. Some people do the physical really well, but they miss the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. Some people do the emotional really well, but they miss the other 3 legs. You get where I'm going, right? So it's a balance in all 4 of them, not just one. And if we can strike balance in all 4, and there's a practical way to do that because there's practices in each area. It's not like this is so beautiful. Like anciently, there were practices. Spiritually, there were practices. Today in modern times, there are practices, and it's just about getting clear about what your practices are. What are the practices for Nikki? What are the practices for Paul? What are the practices for everyone else out there? And start doing those things consistently. Now, here's the operative word: consistently. There is a daily practice. People will pray every single day, but they won't move their body every single day. People will work out every single day, but they won't set an intention every single day for how they want to show up. It baffles me because it's like if you can do one in one area, you can do it in all the other areas too. If you learn what these practices are, if you learn which ones resonate with you, if you learn how to quote unquote stack them and integrate them into your daily life, then you have an opportunity to truly or practically evolve, if you will, or attain a practical enlightenment, which is all about obtaining knowledge, using that knowledge, and then teaching someone else how to do the same thing. Right? That's all enlightenment really is. When there's a transcending of despair in your passions too, and coming outside of yourself. But see, when you become enlightened, that's when you're connecting to higher self, higher power, intuition, the inner voice, God, Awa, Allah, whatever Mother Earth, whatever the representation is for you, right? But you can't transcend self until you find balance. So there's no shortcuts.
No worries. I'm glad I was on mute because my alarm just went off and I just got scared. So that's why I jumped. But no worries. Oh my goodness. This is so amazing. And I had a question and then the alarm kind of just threw it out the window.
Okay, that's okay.
But let's go back. Let me kind of just soak this all in because it was a lot. And I hope that listeners, you're going to have to play this on replay because those were some gems. And what I got was that we have the answers. The answers have been here this whole time. Are we seeking them, and are we seeking them for what our purpose is? So I just love this topic. Just about the concepts of the 5 domains where we know we should be doing all 5 and we just kind of choose one or the other. What are the biggest objections when someone is failing at one or the other? What are the biggest objections that you kind of get from clients that you speak to, and why they're not what is kind of pushing them from the different domains?
Yeah. So I'll try to summarize this in a very short story. Right? I shared this talk around who are the dream killers, and I asked people, What were your dreams when you were 5? What were you passionate about? And everyone will calculate that. And then when they calculate that, they'll say, okay, these are all the things. I thought I was going to be a fireman. I thought I was going to be an astronaut. I thought I was going to be, nuclear physicist or whatever, police officer, fireman, all these things. And, some people achieve that. They achieve the thing that they wanted to be. But there are those who don't. And when that happens, you ask them, who killed your dream? Many people will start listing off, a person, a caregiver, parent, family member, teacher, counselor. Okay, I grew up in hard times. I grew up poor. I grew up in the hood, or I grew up this way. Okay, so that's a situation, right? I was abused when I was a kid. That's trauma, right? I suffered a loss. I lost my grandmother. I lost my mother. I lost my father. I lost these people. And that happened at age 5, 7, 9, 12, 16, 18, 21, maybe 25, maybe 30, 40. Who's the dream killer? And everyone gets quiet. And then maybe the dream killer is you. And then people go, oh my God. I said, no, this doesn't suggest you were 5 years old and you got abused. That doesn't suggest that you made a choice about what happened in that situation. You were under the guidance of a caregiver. Of course, that's not your fault. No one can blame you for that. But a gentleman said something to me a couple of weeks ago, which really resonated. And he said, because I've said it before in many talks, we are here as humans to experience the full range of emotions, everything from pain to love, hate, love, joy, all those things, and everything in the middle. We're here to experience emotions. We're not here to live in them. Right. And the gentleman said to me, he said, we're here to experience pain, but when we suffer, suffering is a choice. And it really resonated with me because once I became aware that this situation was affecting my dreams, I have a choice to do something about it. I can either change that or make that how I identify with myself. Now, a lot of people will be upset that I said that. But I'm not saying whatever happened to you is your fault. If someone did something to you, they are fully responsible for what they did. However, you don't have to let that identify who you are. The sum total of all my experiences lead to right now. I'm talking to Nikki Cuesta right now on this show because of all the good things and all the bad things that happened to me. Do I want to change those things? Because if I change one of those things, I'm not talking to Nikki Cuesta right now. Change one thing from the past, and I'm not talking to her. So the thing is this. Doesn't matter what those things were. You got a choice. Once you become aware of it, what do you want? Because at that point, we're stopping our own dreams. We're getting in our own way. And so many people, it's them getting in their own way. Now, they can blame it on money. Certainly money there's a driver there. If you can't pay for X, Y, and Z, then it's hard to participate in certain functions. Maybe activities, but see, if you don't ask, you don't know what you might get. You might get blessed. Supportive nature has a really funny way of working sometimes. And sometimes all you got to do is ask and you receive sometimes. And so, but if you never ask, you never know if you can receive. But so there's money, there's life. Life is lifing, right? Life is lifing. But, and I'll just, one more thing that I remember someone saying before, which I thought was interesting. I remember when I'm going way back now. I can't remember what it was, maybe 1992 or 96. Al Gore was running for president and he lost the presidency. And I think Tony Robbins was interviewing him and he called on him out in the audience. There's clips of this on the internet. And he said, why did you lose the election? And I forgot what Al Gore said. And Tony Robbins says, that's not it. He said, it wasn't lack of resources. It was lack of resourcefulness. You weren't resourceful enough. You had the right message, but you were not resourceful enough to get that message in everybody's head and in everybody's mind. And because you weren't resourceful enough, you did not become the president of the United States.
Wow.
And I was like, and that, wow.
Wow.
Wow. And those things land because it's like, how bad do you want it? This is your dream.
Yeah.
If you want to have a better life, I mean, I'm guilty of this too. I had to get off my dot. And sometimes we get on a dot because we hit a plateau. We think we got to where we needed to go. And we hit the plateau. We think this is it. But then something's still missing. Something's not right. What are you going to do? Are you going to stay on the dot? There's only 29,200 days in this experience. And the days are counting down. And guess what? The world will continue to rotate and people will continue to move on after you're gone. Now, do you want that to happen, achieving your dream or not achieving your dream? I mean, and then we have the choice.
I love this because I talk about it all the time. And we're just going to go back on a few things and we're going to wrap it up in a minute. But you started with joy, which actually took me to my post that I actually posted today. It was October 2023. Christopher Collins took a photo of me at an event. And I was smiling. I don't know what I was smiling about. I just knew that when I looked at that picture yesterday, because I was going down memory lane, and I looked at that picture, I said, I want to live my life every day with this smile. That is a choice. No matter what's, no matter what bills are due, no matter what, obstacles come in the way, no matter what challenges comes in or out of the community, or just whatever comes my way, I still want to live with that smile every single day. And I just want joy in my life. So I put a post and I kind of asked that question. And one of the questions is, what are you going to choose? Are you going to choose freedom? Are you going to choose, I forgot what the first one was, but the last one is, are you going to choose joy today? So I love that. Also just going back to the part where, we start something and then we don't kind of finish it because we might not feel like we have it all together, or things might just not seem clear. Like Building a Leadership Mindset was a YouTube channel that was built in 2020. And let's go back to that topic. 2020, when we were smacked in the face with COVID, we had only two choices. We either sat back and waited for it to go through, or we made the decision to change the trajectory of our lives. That was the opportunity for everyone to say, hey, let's pump the brakes. Let's see what's really going on. What is my purpose? Going back to, why am I here? Why was I put on this earth? So in 2020, it sat for 2 years because I only thought about the fact that I just wanted to give and motivate and inspire people. And I talked about fixed mindset and growth mindset. But then I went into if my hair's not done, if my makeup's not right, because it was so scripted. I mean, I had my PowerPoint presentation, and then I got passionate once I let go of the presentation, and I kind of shared based on whatever topic I was talking about. But it sat for 2 years because of that, because I didn't know my why then. But when you go and you make that personal decision to say, you know what, I'm going to figure out what my why is, and I'm going to see why I act the way I do or react the way I do, or, what gives me joy. Like, that is the whole purpose of life, right? Is to find those answers. And I believe that what you have, and tell us what you're working on. And, how can people get a hold of you? Because I think this was an absolutely great topic. This is the first time we actually talk about humans, becoming human, that human mindset, and all these things that you're going to need to watch this on replay and get your notebook, because especially that poem as well. So just share with us, how can people get a hold of you, and what is to come in the rest of 2025 for you?
Well, I'll say this. I'm on most social media as Paul McFadden or something very similar to that. Maybe there's a one after it and no period, depending on the socials. My YouTube channel is Evolve Human Potential. And what am I working on? Wow. So I just shared with you all the entire idea behind becoming Human 2.0. So I'm building a tribe, and I'm using very specific language when I talk about it on purpose, because I think there are some ancient practices, ancient rites that we have gotten away from that we kind of need to bring back into our experience. And part of that is answering those two questions: who are you, and what are you here to do? Right. And so getting to and and I kind of define purpose as growing and giving for everyone, growing yourself and giving to others. Now, how you do that is unique to you. How I do it's unique to me. I have my gifts, you have your gifts, you have your values, I have my values, you have your passions, I have my passions. Those are part of the equation. But when you figure out what you're called to do, you're growing in the process. And then whatever you're passionate about, what you're called to do is serving someone, right? So there's the giving piece. Now, giving could be time, it could be volunteering, it could be money, it could be any of those things, right? But it's how are you living your passion? So that's the first thing. Um, and so I'm building a tribe of folks who are intrigued by the human journey, who understand that in this experience we're all on different rungs of the ladder, if you will, but we don't get through this experience by ourselves. Humankind has not evolved by themselves. I mean, everyone has played a role in the advancement of humanity. Um, and so, with that understanding, we're helping each other in the process develop in emotion, mental, physical, spiritual well-being. I have practices, you have practice, we all have different practices. There's certain things that I can guide people in the process of what this is what works. So I'm taking people and I'm guiding people. Call me Morpheus if you want to, but I'm the guide, right? And I'm taking people on this path, on this journey, and inviting people to the journey and saying, hey, you know what? Let's go on this journey together, so you don't have to do it by yourself. Number one. Number two, there's so much noise out there. Let's cut through all the noise and let's start talking to people in the industry who've really done the work, not people who've read about it in a book and decided to get a certification and say, hey, I'm going to help you walk you down this path. Let's talk to people who are really doing this work, who are really embodying this work, who they put their money where their mouth is. They walk the walk and they talk the talk, right? They're doing all of it. Those are the people we need to be talking to. And let's do this thing together, and we can have experiences together. And the other thing is that people, what I've noticed over the last 10 years is that people are really seeking connection in a big way. And I'm not just being around people, but connecting with people where there's a meaningful conversation, there's an authentic love for one another, and and no one wants anything surface anymore. I want deep friendships, or what's the point of even starting it? Because I understand that people are in different seasons and people serve a purpose, but you know I've been getting a lot of lessons, and I think we all will continue to get lessons, but I don't want everything to be about a lesson. And about some mistake that I know that I shouldn't have made anymore. Again, there's that shouldn't, right? But if we are not learning and growing in our experience and not getting the lessons, then we deserve to repeat those things. Now, a lot of people won't like that I said that either, but that's the truth. I mean, we have experiences to learn from them. And if you learn from those experiences, you won't repeat those things again. And if it was a great experience, you will do it over and over again. Like for me, any experience that brings me joy, I want to do that every single day. But an experience that brings me despair, I only want to do that one time.
Oh my goodness, that is powerful. That's so good. That is so good. And it's so simple. It's so, if we really think about it, it's so simple. I think we really cause a lot of our experiences to, again, attach to a particular identity, to attach to a label. And that's not us. And I'm all about um, building those relationships. And you talked about that in your core values. Like when I meet someone, I really want to meet someone. Like I want us to be attached at the hip, that when I said, hey, you know what, I'm going through something, or this is what I'm working on. What do you think? and just all these things to just make something beautiful happen. And we have the opportunity to do this every single day with
Every day.
intention and with consistency, whether we are part of a community or we're building our community. And I love that this is where your passion is at. I feel your heart in what you're doing. It's absolutely amazing. And again, we've been seeing each other on screens, but then we had the chance to see each other twice because I think I seen you in Maryland as
Yes.
well at Jose's function with the Connected Leaders Academy. And that's really where my journey started, because when I met, when I came into this space and this community, that was what I asked for in 2022, was like, God, I want a community that I can serve and can serve me back. And I have been blessed. And it just goes back to our language. What are we asking for? Say it out loud, scream it to the rooftops. When it's just in your mind, it's just an idea. But when you put it down on paper and you start taking the actions and working towards that, it's so much more effective. Things will start to happen that, like this whole networking, just going to events blew my mind, because I wish I had this 20 years ago, right? But now you're cutting that timeline in half. So when you're saying that you're breaking generational molds, like are what is your age range? Like, are you going to like 20s, 30s? Say like my community is from 28 to 74. That's the age range that we have, because it's never too early and it's never too late, but it is necessary. And oh my God, I'm just in love with just all of this. Involve human potential. We have to do better, just in ourselves, and knowing that we can do it and there are opportunities. We just have to figure out what that is. So
right.
Paul, how can people get a hold of you? I did put your link tree in the scroll at the bottom. It will be attached to every platform. But how can people get a hold of you?
So, the quickest way is on Facebook. I'm on there a lot. So Facebook, I am Paul McFadden there. Um, I would say you were talking about the age range, 25 to 50 really is kind of like the sweet spot. But I've had people who are 17, 18 say, I'm looking for my purpose. I'm like, bless you.
Yes.
Thank you for asking. And let's get on the journey now, because
Oh,
17, that's not too early. Let's do it. I mean, yeah, you don't have all the life experiences, but maybe you'll make less mistakes. At the end of the day, you're going to make your decisions for what you need to do and govern your life the way you need to govern it. But there are things I wish I had learned how to meditate when I was 15, 16, 17. I wish I knew how to set intentions when I was 15, 16, or 17. I wish I'd have had the same workout regimen that I have now when I was 15, 16, or 17. There's a lot of things I wish I had done. But I don't want to go out of this world with regrets. I'm doing them now.
yeah.
Right.
It's
Like you
never
said,
too
it's never too late. So um but the urgency is there. So I'm gonna say it again, because I feel like we're at the precipice of a time where humankind can make some decisions. We can go down this route with technology and get all the way, for lack of a better analogy, get in bed with technology all the way, right? But then we do that without really realizing what the true potential we have as human beings is. And that potential is unbounded as far as I'm concerned. And there's a lot of research that says the same thing. So there is a reason to at least explore it. I mean, we might end up making a decision to go that way, but what happens if we, are able to do some of these superhuman things that we didn't think were possible before, but then because we got the right guidance, we had access to the right resources, because we were being resourceful, we were able to get something done and have an experience where we never had that before. Like, wow, that's pretty interesting. Now, do you want a chip in your brain or not? Actually, I think I'll pass on the chip. Right. So there's that. So you got the link tree is really all the information is there. It's Facebook for certain. I got a podcast too, and yeah, if people that are on the journey, thinking about the journey, curious about the journey, in a journey feeling frustrated, in a journey feeling having hit a plateau, this is for you.
for
This is for you.
you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. It has been phenomenal. I'm glad that we got this on here and that it's going to be shared with the world and our audience, that they take note, connect with him. He is just a beautiful human being as well. Every time I'm in his presence, it's always a joy. Just your smile, your energy that you exude. It's always a great conversation. And I'm sure you've probably been told that. But it's truly what I feel. And I'm just glad that we made it here. We got your story on Building a Leadership Mindset podcast. It will forever continue to live on just the experiences, just going back to our life experiences being the catalyst of something that you didn't even know that can not just one find your purpose, but create income and create a life of purpose, which leads to leaving a legacy behind. And I think, Paul, you have that formula for this, and I'm so happy. So connect with Paul. I'm going to give him about a minute to just share his final thoughts, and we will close this out. What do you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, what's the last thing I want to leave you all with? I think that the idea here is going to sound simple. It's not necessarily easy because it does take a little bit of dedication. It takes willingness first, a decision, willingness, and then a little bit of effort. The effort doesn't have to be hard. I think a lot of times we think it's hard. It's hard to change, and I'll say that change only feels difficult because the thing we want to change into seems extremely difficult. We don't change anything until the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of staying, changing. So we have, so we got to. It's like you don't have to do anything. You don't need to do anything. You'd be best served if you're not in the place that you want to be to explore what the alternatives are, and if finding or aligning to purpose. I don't think you need to find purpose. I think you just align to it. I think it's already there. You just got to align with it. When you align with purpose, things become more clear. And it does take intention, and it does take consistency. But I can tell you that if you are very intentional and you're consistent, you will change. That's guaranteed. There's nothing to hold you back with intention and consistency. So it's just like the sprouting plant. You water it and give it sunlight, it's going to break through the surface. If you stop watering it, you stop with the sun, it won't. And I think that we all have the opportunity to sprout. And if you haven't sprouted yet, why not now?
Yep, that's right. That's what I say. That's what God told me when I left a 14-year career. If not now, when?
Mm-hmm.
Not now, when we have our days are counted. We don't know what that looks like. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you so much to all the listeners at Building a Leadership Mindset podcast. If you feel like someone needs to hear this, share this message, subscribe, comment, and reach out to Paul, connect with him. And we will be back soon with another guest. I'm super excited. Have a great day. And as I always say, my friends, make it count. Bye, everyone.